Okay, let's see if we can get this to work. Hello, YouTube. Oh, so we are live for the first time ever on FFRF's YouTube channel, which means there's probably not going to be too many of you that tune in, but we're hoping to do more of this in the future. So let's just see how this works, shall we? We're just taking it out for a spin. We're going to see what happens. Today's a big day. Today's an exciting day. It is Ask an Atheist Day, April 16th. Happy birthday to anybody out there whose birthday it might be on April 16th. But Ask an Atheist Day. That means you get to ask those godless heathens in your life the questions that you always wanted to ask, but were too polite or too scared or too nervous to ask. So you can go ahead and do that to me right here, right now. I'm going to be hanging out. Hi, KCA. Randy. Hi, Melissa. Thanks for joining. This is FFRF's first time going live on YouTube. We're going to try to do some more of this because we're all stuck in our houses. Here's my home office. This is actually a couple of my photos that I've done in the past. White Sands National Monument. I can't figure out how to point in a in a reverse camera. This is taken at Versailles. Anyway, if you've got questions today, it doesn't have to be about atheism. You got questions about FFRF. This is just us hanging out, chatting, shooting the breeze. I am still drinking coffee because for some reason I'm exhausted. Hi, Cammie. Hi, James. Oh, James says he enjoyed my... James, thank you very much. That is awfully kind of you. If you did like The Founding Myth or have not read it, you should definitely read it if you liked it. Please be sure to say so everywhere. Spread the real good news. Hi, Thomas. Greetings from Knoxville. So I've got my cup of coffee here. This was popular on the Facebook Live because it's my Black Sheep mug that I got for $0.25 at a thrift store. Hi, Casey. Well, thanks everybody for joining. This is really exciting. We're going to do hopefully a lot more of these, and we're going to try to convince FFRF's co-presidents, Dan Barker and Annie Laurie, to get over here more. We're going to work on just doing kind of a lot more video content since everybody I know is stuck at home, and it's kind of rough out there, and we want to give everybody things to do with their time. I've personally been doing a lot of home renovation projects. I'm not going to show you them now in the little off time I had. I am not productive now because I have children, and it's incredibly hard to be productive when they don't have school or daycare or anything like that. I think every parent right now is learning the value of teachers and daycare providers. Not that we didn't already know it, but Melissa, nice joke. You are funny. Very good. Love it. So, okay, if you do have questions about FFRF, what's going on in the world, what's going on in the FFRF world with COVID, if you have questions about atheism, anything, shoot. One question that I've been getting a lot today that I'm going to go ahead and answer up front is, what's FFRF doing to help with the pandemic? And the answer is quite a bit, actually. I mean, we went remote as an office pretty early on, especially my team, the strategic response team, went remote very early to kind of test the waters for the rest of the FFRF office. We have an awesome tech team at the Freedom from Religion Foundation that made it really easy for all of us to work remotely. We also have been doing a lot more besides just kind of as an organization, how we operate. FFRF's missions are still being fulfilled. One of the things we did early on was we wrote to every single governor in the country, and we told them that they could not exempt churches and worship services from their stay-at-home orders because viruses don't care about where they infect people or about the boundaries of churches or holy ground. They just travel from person to person. They infect people and then they travel to more people. One worshiper in South Korea infected 1,200 other people. 60% of the cases in South Korea were traced back to a church cluster. Reuters has a really cool story on this, and it's actually sort of a graphic story, and I would really recommend it. It's searching for that stat or searching for some of FFRF's letters will get you to that Reuters story, because we've also been sending follow-up letters as more data becomes available to governors like DeWine of Ohio and DeSantis of Florida. explaining why these exemptions are unconstitutional. We also launched on the FFRF webpage. We have launched now a new, basically it's a web page for you so that you can take action on your own. I know a lot of people are sitting at home, frustrated seeing these people driving up to church services and saying, I'm not going to get infected because I'm covered in Jesus's blood, which is gross and also problematic because it's spreading the disease. So I think that you can do things too, and we wanted to help facilitate that. So we have on our website right now, we have COVID resources. This includes a memo that you can download that you can send to your elected officials, explaining why churches need to be included in these orders. And you can send it to police departments and health officials who are in charge of enforcing these orders to make sure that they go to they actually enforce this against churches, if that makes sense. So that's one of the big things, and I would encourage all of you to go check that page out. We'll post a link to that. I'm going to ask Lauren, who should be watching this too, to help me out and post a link there and see if and you can all go see it on that page. So let me get back out here and we'll see. Oh, Melissa's in Florida. Clyde, thank you. Really appreciate it. Don't know what that means. It sounds political. I'll go ahead and ignore that one. All right. Oh, I thought somebody was saying they're day drinking, but everybody's just drinking coffee. Cheers. I can't, if I try to show you, it'll pour out, but I promise it's coffee. I did get a little crazy and put some sugar-free vanilla flavoring in there because we had it lying around, and you can't go out to a coffee shop, so bring the coffee shop to you, I guess. So Mark is referencing the Kentucky governor and what he tried to do, and I suspect the Louisville case is what Mark is thinking of. This is a really interesting case, and stay tuned for more on it. Basically, this was a church in Louisville, Kentucky, who wanted to do drive-up services. They wanted to have people drive in, and then they would have the preacher up on a stage, kind of like a drive-in movie theater, okay? Which sounds good in theory. The mayor of Louisville said, we'd really encourage you to stay home. We had a press conference, told people they really ought to do that. And the preacher and the church sued the city of Louisville and the mayor, saying that violated their religious liberty. Now, there is no colorable religious freedom argument here, okay, right? Your right to practice your religion does not include the right to infect and kill other citizens, okay? You do not have that right. That's been pretty clear for more than a century. Again, check out our letters. So, no real right there. But this Christian nationalist judge, a guy named Justin Walker, who has been on the bench for not even 6 months, came off with both Christian nationalist barrels blazing. He was, first of all, you have to understand, he was, according to the Nonpartisan American Bar Association, this judge was unqualified. They rate nominees for all federal courts, and he was rated as unqualified. That is hard to get, and still squeaked through. And Trump has already nominated him despite being unqualified for the DC circuit. So this is the guy who is deciding this case, and he waded into it really without any attempt to be impartial. The opinion starts, on Holy Thursday, this is quote, on Holy Thursday, an American mayor criminalized the communal celebration of Easter. Okay? That is fundamentally false. Absolutely not true. And it's just, at best, well, let me back up. He did that without hearing the government side of the story, which is really weird in the law. It's called an ex parte decision. And it was really a poor choice on his part because the mayor and city of Louisville didn't do anything. They didn't issue any orders. So there was nothing for the church to challenge. What the church should have challenged was the governor's order, but they didn't do that. And still, this judge waded in and said, yeah, we're issuing this restraining order against the government that hasn't done anything, which is kind of unbelievable. Stay tuned. FFRF is going to be writing some statements on this. I'll probably do a couple op-eds as well. This guy is up, as I said, for the DC Circuit, Justin Walker, totally unqualified, and we are going to be opposing him as well. Matthew Werner asks, Werner, sorry, buddy, how are unqualified judges removed from the bench? They're not supposed to be there in the first place. Federal judges have lifetime appointments. They can be removed. They can be impeached if they misbehave, essentially. So the Senate's not supposed to allow unqualified judges in the first place. We are past that. So unfortunately, that is frustrating. So how about a drive-in exorcist? Ooh, I mean, I'm all for drive-in. Okay, let's see. Letroon asks, why do you think people are more polarized in the last few years than before, so much so that they throw away any sort of spectrum of ideas? Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, and I think it's a hard one to pinpoint. I would say a lot of it is due to social media. Twitter is where nuance goes to die, and I think people tend to assign the worst possible motives and the worst possible interpretations to things they read online. It becomes very adversarial, which is what our court system is supposed to be, where Judge Walker screwed up his case, but that's not necessarily what you're looking for when you're trying to have a conversation with somebody. But I don't know the answer to that. That's just a guess. And I'm sure that it's not a single answer to that. Jesse Smith Jesse Smith asks, Andrew, curious to know your favorite for any reason Bible verse. Very fun question. Not too difficult. Matthew chapter 6, verses 5 and 6. This is Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, and he condemns public prayer as hypocrisy. He says, do not be like the hypocrites who love to be seen praying on street corners that they may be seen by others. Go into the closet and pray to your Father who is in secret. So it tells Christians not to pray publicly, that their religion is not about a showy, it's not about having a public show of prayer, which is something that our government and elected officials, I'm thinking about the National Day of Prayer here, for instance, ought to take to heart. So Matthew 6, chapter 6, verses 5 and 6 would probably be my favorite Bible verse. Kelly Thornhill, were you raised in an atheist family like many of us? Christians are raised in the church, or did you make the decision on your own? No, so my mom really encouraged intellectual and experiential curiosity. I went to temple with my Jewish friends. I went to mass with Catholic friends, various churches with my other Christian friends. It became very obvious to me very early on that none of these different religions had any reason really for claiming that they held the exclusive truth, but they all made that claim. So the obvious answer to me was, well, if none of you have a good reason for being right, you're all wrong. So it became very obvious to me early on. I'm pretty sure that was my mom's plan. So I was raised, I guess, as a free thinker. I mean, nothing was forced on me. I will say I have absolute and utmost respect for people who are raised in religions and are able to escape. To be able to shed those mind-forged manacles and have the intellectual fortitude and curiosity and be able to follow it to the end of that journey, to me, is really amazing and something that everybody who does that ought to be truly, truly proud of. It really is remarkable. I stand in awe of people like Jerry Witt and Dan Barker and Chrissy Stroop and Lauren O'Neill, who were raised in these really religious backgrounds. And then sometimes, for instance, in the case of Dan and Jerry, their entire livelihoods, their salaries, their jobs depended on maintaining this belief system. And they still had the intellectual strength to move forward and question those beliefs and follow it to the logical conclusion. And when I say intellectual strength, I don't mean that they were smart enough to do that. You don't have to be smart to be an atheist. You just have to change your mind about this set of ideas. But to be able to change their minds about ideas that were so integral to their identity and their livelihood, I think is really remarkable and something to be applauded. Dr. JDP asks, when Christians try to dispel carbon dating, I've heard more evidence for mitochondrial DNA. What is your response to people who claim carbon dating can't be trusted? I mean, they accept science in every other area of their life. It's disingenuous to try to pick apart this particular aspect of science because it undercuts one of their particular religious beliefs. I mean, how many modern conveniences, how much modern medicine do they rely on? If they were truly going to be consistent, they ought to be opposing all of that, but they're not, which I think sometimes we tend to get into the specifics of the argument, and that can be a mistake. So for instance, in the founding myth, when I talk about arguing with Christian nationalists, one of the things I encourage everybody to do is to stop arguing about the religion of the founding fathers, right? It's a fascinating conversation to have. I love having it. I could talk about it for hours, but it's never going to get us anywhere. Instead, the better argument is, look, the religion of the founding fathers doesn't matter because it doesn't prove that we were founded as a Christian nation. Even if all the founding fathers were Jesus rose from the dead Christians, and they weren't. But even if they all were, that wouldn't prove that they used the tenets of or the principles of that religion to build this nation. You'd still have to point to a particular principle of Christianity that they used to build the United States, and you can't do that. And this is kind of a similar situation. Don't necessarily focus on the science of carbon dating. Focus on hit the broader argument that they're trying to make. Marcelo Lang, what's your contingency plan for when you get to the pearly gates and are refused admission? I mean, what's yours? All likelihood you are wrong too, my friend. There are thousands, 3,000 some religions and gods on that people believe in on this planet. So in all likelihood, you're wrong too. So what is your contingency plan? I mean, it's just seems to be I'm trying to think of Hitchens did a Bertrand Russell impression, and I can't do either of them, so I'm not going to attempt to do it. But yeah, you didn't give me enough evidence, God. Sorry. If you want people to believe in you, you might want to correct that. I'm not too worried about it. Gary asks, are there any FFRF meetings or offices in Cleveland, Ohio? So the only FFRF offices are the Free Thought Hall, which is our flagship building in Madison, Wisconsin. And we give tours of that whenever we have conventions in Madison. And then we do have an office share in Washington, D.C. also, where our government affairs division is based. We have chapters, however, FFRF members who meet up regularly all across the country. There's a page on our website where people can check that out. We'll have Lauren link to that in the comments here. And there is one in the Ohio area, I believe. I just don't know where in Ohio, so I don't want to say it's definitely in Cleveland. Mike K asks, aren't you the guy who had his book burned? What was that like, knowing somebody burned something you worked so hard to write? Yes, Mike, I am that guy. That was Pastor Greg Locke, who burned a copy of my book, The Founding Myth, Why Christian Nationalism is Un-American. Took out a blowtorch and burned it. It was really, I mean, I had a lot of mixed emotions watching it. It was scary in a way because, I mean, it's about as fascist as you can get. But I was also, I will admit, proud. I had quite a bit of pride that the ideas in my book were so scary to this guy. They put so much fear into him that he couldn't even begin to read them. He had to try to destroy the ideas by destroying the medium in which they were presented, which obviously he can't do. So I felt in a way pretty proud that I had formulated these ideas and these arguments in a way that was so terrifying to this particular Christian nationalist. And I think that all Christian nationalists should be that scared of this book because it does completely dismantle their identity. That was the goal, to utterly destroy the Christian nationalist identity and the myths on which it was based. Garth, what's the average airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? Garth, I need to know if that's the African or the European swallow before I can answer. S. Dawn asks, when are you writing another book? I have some ideas bouncing around. I've been jotting them down. My publisher is interested and wants me to get cracking on it. This pandemic has thrown everything into all my normal scheduling's thrown off. Normally I get up at 5 and work out and start to write some and then, head off to work. And all of that has been just thrown into complete chaos. And I thought I would have a lot more time now, and I don't. I have way less time now, which is kind of amazing. Otter words. Anyway, Dawn, the final answer is I'm not sure when it's going to be, but there will be another book. Otter words. What evidence would convince you of the existence of God? Ooh, that's a really good question. And it's something I actually ask myself regularly. And I've had this conversation with Dan Barker too. It's something we kind of talk about from time to time, and we sort of always revisit it. There's Dan's answer is kind of something like a super hyper specific prophecy that would be really impossible to explain away, like God telling him or carving something on the moon so that everybody could see it. That was a very specific, prophecy. A meteor will hit here at these coordinates. It'll do this, something along those lines. But to me, any time I think of something that, okay, that would convince me that there's a God, the better explanation for whatever that is, like the better explanation for Dan's, is that there is you're losing your grasp of reality. And so this is the problem I have whenever I start to think of good evidence. You have to say, well, is it more likely that that's evidence for God, or that I am, losing my mind or losing my grasp of reality, or something is happening in my brain that is tweaking my beliefs? And I always end up coming back to that. So it's hard to think of something that would convince me, but it's a question that I always come back on, and I'd love to hear what other people think in the comments. What is a piece of evidence that would convince you that God exists if you're an atheist? If you're a believer, tell us what would convince you that God doesn't exist, because that's almost certainly out there. Okay, so guys, we are past 20 minutes already. We set a goal for 20 minutes for our first live stream. We're coming up on 23, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. If you enjoyed this, please give us the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. Definitely want to do more of these, but want to know what you think too. So help us make this better, more exciting for you. Obviously, we're short on resources because we don't have our normal studio. So this is just me doing this from my home. But Freedom from Religion Foundation is here for you during this time. We're going to keep fighting to ensure that churches are not being allowed to spread this virus, and that they're not getting access to government funds in the stimulus. Continue to fight for the separation of state and church, and ensure that we have a secular government, because there's no such thing as the freedom of religion without a government that's free from religion. So Ask an Atheist Day. Get out there and represent, and we will talk to you all soon. Thank you very much.